Well, happy 2026. Did you make your New Year's resolutions yet? I've been having a lot of conversations actually over the last couple of weeks, and I've noticed that people are not necessarily making resolutions. They're not starting this year off with clarity and resolve, but with questions. Questions about work, about relationships, health, what comes next. And those questions don't neatly fit into resolution. Which is interesting because our culture tells us that we'll be better off if we have it all mapped out, right? At least a 5-year plan or maybe just a vision board for the year. I even read an article this past week. It turns out the practice of New Year's resolutions is 4,000 years old. Who knew? Apparently practiced by the ancient Babylonians. They promised to return borrowed farm equipment, to settle debts, and to make relationships right. But what I also read there was that the word resolution originally meant reducing things into simpler forms. But somewhere along the way, I think we flipped it, and now we're trying to add more goals, more tracking, more things, more pressure. And so we get to mid-January, and what happens when we don't have that crystal clear roadmap? I think we end up feeling anxious or behind, like we're already failing at the new year. But here's what I want to suggest this morning. What if starting the new year with questions instead of answers isn't a problem, but actually the point? What if Epiphany meets us exactly where we are, in the uncertainty, and it offers us something better than a 5-year plan? I think we often think of Epiphany as one of those aha moments, like where everything just comes into sharp focus. And then we are clear and we know exactly what to do. But in today's scriptures, clarity comes more like the dawn. It comes gradually, just enough to see where to take the next step. And as I put a contemplative lens on these familiar passages, I came up with a few thoughts. I think first to note is that Isaiah isn't speaking to a people who have it all together. He's speaking to a people who are surrounded by rubble, in deep trauma, trying to make sense of what they have lost. And so what's so striking is that he doesn't say, don't cheer up, the darkness is gone. No, he says, arise and shine, for your light has come, even while the darkness still covers the earth. That Hebrew verb for has risen is the same word to use as the sun is rising, light breaking in through the darkness. And in Isaiah's vision, the glory of the Lord has already begun to shine even while the world is still dark. That's dawn, light appearing gradually. And I think that's really how our lives work, don't you think? We get a glimpse of something before we get complete clarity, don't we? A sense that something needs to change, maybe in your work or in a relationship, how you're living. Maybe you can't quite name it yet, and you can't plan for it. You can't see the whole path, but something in you is stirring. And you begin to think, I don't know, maybe my gifts aren't being used, or maybe that relationship needs a little bit of attention, or maybe it's time to let this thing go. You have that glimmer. It's like a pull, a quiet knowing. And I would tell you that that is not confusion. That's the light beginning to rise. I admit it often feels confusing, but something is rising within us. And what Isaiah is telling us is that you don't have to wait till the lights have been turned on completely to trust that glimmer. Because it's already begun. you can trust it. You can hope in it. And this hope isn't something that we have to manufacture. Isaiah says it's a posture we take. What does he say? Lift up your eyes. Pay attention. Look. Take note. Lifting up our eyes becomes like a spiritual practice, a daily choice to notice whatever little bit of light is already present, even when so much feels unresolved and unsure. Isaiah shows us that you don't have to fix your life first before the light can find you. It will show up in the mess, in grief or in confusion, in the middle of everything that feels broken. The light, he says, is already there. You just have to walk toward it, perceive it, lift your eyes to it. And the Magi show us what that looks like. And now I know we think we know this story by now. In the last month, we've probably heard it at least 4 times. We hear it every year, especially on this first Sunday of the year. And it shows up at Christmas pageants with children and the Christmas Eve story. And the wise men are usually dressed up as cute kings with little crowns, confidently walking with their gifts across the stage like they know exactly where they're going. But when you slow this story down and take a deeper listen, that confidence is not actually there. Neither are the crowns, but that's another sermon. The Magi receive no confirmation that what they're doing is right. No voice says, oh yeah, keep going, you're on the right path. All they have is a star. Direction, but not explanation. Movement, but not certainty. And what's striking is that following that star brings them closer to danger, not farther from it. Now, generations of cute Christmas pageants notwithstanding, this story gently disrupts the idea that guidance will always feel comforting and clear. Rather, sacred instruction simply asks us to stay awake, to pay attention, and to keep moving, step by step. Remembering that guidance that we're getting, even when it's sacred, won't always make life safer. But it does invite us to pay attention. And I think that's where the story starts to get more familiar, because I think most of the time that's how guidance meets us in our own lives too. Quietly, without guarantees, one step at a time. As you may know, I spend a lot of my spare time hiking. I've been hiking since I was 14 years old, and I never stopped. And it has taught me a lot about life. One of the things I have learned well is that when you're on the trail, you never see the whole route. There's the promise of a summit or a pretty view, but you might not get there. And hiking is also a great reminder that not everything that is dangerous on the path will announce itself. You learn over time that some conditions call for caution, always. Moss, wet leaves, ice that you can't see under the snow. And you learn something else too. Panicking only makes it worse. The only thing that truly helps is step by step, slowing down, adjusting how you walk with quiet, steady, calm attention. Which leads to one last thing that I think this text reveals to us today. When you're paying attention, when you're following that light, it leads us to remember love. Did you notice that in the story with the Magi, there is no divine voice shouting at them where to go? They set out initially because they are drawn. Something about that star just catches their attention. It awakens curiosity. It stirs a longing within them. And when they arrive, Matthew tells us they were overwhelmed with joy. Not relieved that their journey was over, not proud that they had found it and figured it all out, but overwhelmed with joy. They were awake to something. Contemplative teacher James Finley says that spiritual awakening is not about learning something new. It's about remembering what we already know in the depths of our being. And I think that's exactly what was happening in that moment. The Magi recognized something that they had always carried within them, but perhaps they had forgotten. That love, God's love, was at the center of everything. At the center of the world, at the center of their own being. The star didn't teach them this, but it helped them to remember it. And remembering, it flooded them with joy, as I think it often does. What Isaiah and the Magi show us is that the light and love of Christ doesn't offer guidance from the place that we wish we were 5 years from now. It offers us guidance from where we actually are, right now, in the middle of our questions, in the uncertainty, in the darkness that has not fully lifted yet. Faith doesn't give us a whole roadmap. It gives us enough light for the next step, and that light is what we're learning to notice. That's what we're learning to trust. That's what draws us forward one step at a time. We are trying to remember day by day the love that came close at Christmas is a love that is close to us always. That's a love that protects us from nothing. That's the truth. It won't protect us from hardship, but it will sustain us in everything. I think why we're not given that clarity all at once is because then we would rely on certainty as if it were the thing that was sustaining us when it isn't. It is remembering that we are held by this love through all things, in all things, always. As Mark so beautifully reminded us on Christmas Eve, our struggle isn't believing in this love. It's just remembering it, especially when we need it most. So if you're starting out this new year maybe feeling a little unsure or unsettled, it doesn't mean that you have lost your faith. I think it means that your faith is actually working. Trusting and hoping, even when you can't see the whole path. Remember what I said at the beginning about that article I'd read, that the word resolution originally meant reducing things to a simpler form? I think that's what Epiphany offers us. Not more complexity, not a bigger plan, but simplification. One star, one direction, one next step. So here's a simple practice that maybe you'd like to carry into 2026 with you. Rather than asking for the whole plan or needing everything to make sense, try asking one gentler question that you hold in prayer. What is the next right step? And then faithfully take it. Maybe you aren't beginning this year with certainty, but you are beginning it with guidance. Always. The light is already present. And for now, that is enough. Just enough to take the next step. And that's enough to begin today. Thanks be to God. Amen.